Hello and welcome to the Gift and Home channel. My name is Cinda Baxter. I'm the owner of Details Inc., fine stationery, paper, and gifts in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And today's segment will be standing in the spotlight without getting burned. It's about press releases, and admittedly, it's something that intimidates a lot of people and really shouldn't. It's a pretty simple process to go through if you just have the right tools and the right templates to follow. It's a good way to get information out and, depending on how you treat the media locally, to make some good friends along the way. You want to keep in mind that anytime you do a news release, it needs to be appropriate, aka newsworthy. Now what that means is it has to be something people are actually going to care about reading. And by people, I mean the people in the media, because if they look at it and they think, what is this? They aren't going to pick it up and do a thing with it. A good example would be, for instance, if you had received a national award. Or something like this. This is going to make a press release in my website, believe me, and certainly when I'm going to issue to local media. Those are the kind of things that are different and unique and set you apart. It tells an interesting story. A bad example is you're launching your online store. Now, while to you that's a huge thing, to your friends it's a big thing, to your customers it might be terribly impressive, bottom line is there are a zillion online stores, and when the media looks at that, they're going to say, what's one more? That's not newsworthy. You want to be sure to be appropriate, because if you're not, the media has a long memory. If they see a store keeps ratcheting out press release after press release after press release with these things that shouldn't even be on a press release, every time they see your name, it's going to end up in the circular file. You don't want to end up blacklisting yourself. That's the last thing that's going to work for you. Trying to make a sale is something you don't want to do in a press release. So you want to avoid words like I, we, you. You don't want to bring any kind of jargon in. You don't want to try to pitch to the customer. Press releases aren't written for the customer. They're written as a news item. Keep that in mind and it'll keep you out of trouble. You want to remember that picking up a new vendor, while it's big to you, again, not so big in the media. Avoid cliches. You know, we'll save the customer money. Great savings. No, it reads like it's out of a tabloid ad. Don't do it. You want to learn how to write a press release. Now, there are some really good sources online. My particular favorite is prweb.com. They issue press releases, distribute press releases, but more importantly, they give some really good tools about how to write a press release, about what is newsworthy, what's not newsworthy, what's going to work, what's not going to work. I think they're a remarkably easy site to navigate. They also have templates if you feel like you want to follow a template the first time out to kind of get your feet wet. Basically, you want to keep in mind as you start writing a press release, you want to stay with a nice, clean economy of words. You want to keep it brief. You want to keep it easy. You want paragraphs that maybe have 3 to 5 sentences each in them. You want to be sure you hit the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, and why. And you want to be sure to start strong. You don't want to bury the lead. You want to get the important information right up there first and keep it interesting. Don't use exclamation points anywhere because it sounds like you're screaming as you're writing. Never effective. Be sure if you quote anybody, whether it's a vendor, a customer, or even your own employees, to get permission to put it in print. If you're quoting anything from a vendor at all, be sure that you show a copy to the vendor and get their okay on the entire press release. You want to stay in their good graces. If you can't write a press release, you're one of those people who just doesn't feel comfortable doing the writing, hire someone. There are people who will do that. Get creative. Go to your journalism department at the local college maybe and see if there's somebody there that wants a really inexpensive part-time job helping write releases. Don't worry about having to do it all yourself. Now, as you go to prweb.com, you're going to see a lot of really solid information, as I mentioned. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through the nuts and bolts of what makes a press release. You're going to start with a headline that announces news in a title font, ideally under 80 characters total. And you want to capitalize every single word except for prepositions and articles that are 3 letters or less. Now, right after that, you're going to have a really brief summary paragraph. It's a little bit longer synopsis, maybe 1 to 4 sentences. Again, the same typeface as the headline, using normal capitalization now, with normal punctuation. And then from there, you're going to get into the city, state, and date. You have a lead sentence that contains the most important information in 25 words or less. You want to grab the attention of the reader because you have to state the news that you're wanting to announce. This one paragraph should be able to stand on its own. From here you go into body content, keeping sentences and paragraphs short, about 3 or 4 lines. And be sure to hit those 5 W's, who, what, when, where, and why. Next, expand on the info in the lead paragraph. This is where you get to really strut your stuff a little bit. This is where you also include quotes from any of the key players or experts using, again, their permission. Make sure the story is interesting so people will want to read it and not have to suffer through it. Again, avoid words like I, we, and you, because if they're not part of a quote, they're red flags that the piece is an ad, not a press release. If you plan to submit your release through an internet service, be careful not to include an email address in the press release unless you really enjoy receiving spam, and I do mean a lot of it. When it comes to emails and press releases, there are things called spam bots, or crawlers, or spiders. Now, these are all terms that we're probably going to get back into a little further down the road when we talk about internet and websites. But essentially what happens is a lot of the spammers have these little digital monsters that go out and they look for email addresses in content. They pull it up, they plug it into a system, and you never ever get away from the spam. They sell it like people used to sell mailing lists. Be very cautious about that. As you consider following the template that's on prweb.com, go all the way to the end. Keep an eye on where you want to put your contact information. Again, don't resist, or do resist the temptation to put an email address into that. And then be sure to hit the very end of the press release with 3 pound signs. Now that sounds a little weird and it looks a little weird, but what it does is it triggers the end of the press release. It tells the media, stop. Simple thing to do. When you come to distributing, you want to consider a couple of different options. Ideally, you don't want to skip over your local media. One way to do that is just think about who's going to approach your customer, who your customer is going to watch. Go in, talk to them, call them. Say, listen, if I have a press release, how would you prefer it be submitted? By fax, email? They'll tell you, but keep track of that. And then also consider an online service like prweb.com. There are a couple of others, sendtopress.com, S-E-N-D, the number 2, press, or erelease.com. These are all services that will take care of going ahead and putting the release out there. You want to be careful with online services, though, because many of them are free, many of them charge. Be careful and read the fine print. Find out what you're really paying for, what you're really getting. A lot of them will say that they release to over 100,000 outlets, but the bottom line is if those outlets are Dog Bones R Us and you're selling fine stationery, that outlet isn't going to have any value for you. So keep in mind, press releases are an important tool. Treat them with respect. You'll see your name in print. Again, my name is Cinda Baxter. I thank you for watching. Stay tuned. We're going to jump into advertising next.